today I'm going to be restarting a game that I've played a few times now. I just keep coming back to it, even though it isn't per se a game that I played during the arcade era. It still very much looks and plays like one, so I think it qualifies. It's a twin-stick shooter, much like Robotron would be. It's quite simple, really. These little yellow diamonds we're collecting not only count as experience, but they're also multipliers. And of course, the further you get, the higher the multiplier, so it's a very high risk reward system. And as this particular stage is timed, it rewards a little more aggressive play. Each of the shapes has its own particular approach to attacking. The blue diamonds are aggressive. The little asterisk things are just a bit more casual, you'd say. And the purple squares tend to be a little slower. So far, these first several are score attack based modes. Those little spinning friends we have here, they tend to move somewhat randomly. So with the blue squares here, blue diamonds, they try to trap you. We have a new enemy here, these little arrow things. They're pretty easy to deal with, as they just go in one general direction back and forth. You deal with them to your own convenience. That's the best way to deal with them. Whenever they're all converging to one area, just blast them. We still have about a minute left, so there's no reason to be so aggressive yet. I think it's based on how well you're doing, if you've died yet or not, which we've not. These are power-ups. If you clear the entire pattern, you get a boost to your firepower, or other benefits and boosts. Which provides a huge boost to your score as well. Those enemies, those little yellow dudes, aren't too much of a threat. They're pretty small. They can help get you trapped in an area. Good thing we don't have lives here, huh? There's another purpose of these little geomes, they're called. You'll see in a little bit. This is a bit of a casual run, just showing off the levels. This is the first, as I call them, official stages, because you have a score limit, not necessarily a time limit. You tend to start pretty slow. We've seen all these enemies before. It's starting to multiply though. So now we have smart bombs. You'll see them a little bit later. But right now things are still under control. Our little arrow friends here are a little bit easier to handle in, as I call it, 2D mode. Because not only are they easier to see, they're only going in one very manageable direction. Even if they do go back and forth, you can deal with them much easier just by firing in that direction for a while. We saw a new enemy here. These little pink cubes, whenever you shoot them once, they split. And you have to shoot them again. See, arrows aren't too big of a deal. It's a super state that does you in sometimes, because they're pretty random whenever they're spawning, wherever they spawn. And typically they spawn now when things are about to get hectic. I have a bit of a bad habit here because in the original Geometry Wars, if you died, you reset your multiplier. That's not true here, but nevertheless, I almost never use it. Ah, bummer. You can do better than that. Anyways, onwards we go. Be seeing a little bit later how I'm able to get much higher scores than I am right now. But in the meantime, we have barriers this time. We cannot fire through them. Enemies cannot go through them. It helps to add to the claustrophobia you sometimes get. Sometimes. Just a minute. You hush. What are you doing? What are you doing? Anyways, where were we? That's right. These pink cubes are a lot tougher. That little circle thing we saw is what you would consider a UFO in Space Invaders. Come on, girl. Come on. There we go. Now, where were we? Well, these green enemies here are quite annoying, because they actively try to avoid your shots. They're usually the ones that do me. I don't believe you get score for using your smart bombs, but a pretty convenient way to boost your multiplier. So when things are a little more manageable, you still get the boost for multiplier that you had before. And deal with our green friends first. There we go. That's still not too bad. What was that? 2? Yep. Boss time. I prefer 2D bosses. This is basically how they work. You destroy the enemies to get a multiplier for your score, but you have to defeat the boss in each particular wave before the time runs out. There's no way to tell exactly how many waves the boss has, but you only have one life to beat him. So let's try that again, shall we? The toughest thing about the bosses is just their overall size. Still, it's not too big of a deal. The only thing that's kind of a bummer is you only have one life to beat them. And of course, the enemies at these spawns are not defeated right away just because you cleared a wave. So this is how you deal with the arrows and bosses in particular. We have 46 seconds. You can tell that he's nearly defeated as he starts to move more and more. If you can gender stones. It's a little tricky, because you have to watch out for the arrows as well as its own movement. So let's try that one more time, shall we? We'll get it eventually. But even if we're resetting, we're still getting the geomes. Not for the particular multiplier purpose, but for another purpose we'll see later. Alright, we'll rush through this particular wave, deal with the arrows. Great. Deal with the splitters. So far, so good. It's almost as fast as we are. No, stop following me. This is pretty tricky. Perhaps we bombed too early. We're learning here, though. I think we've taken too much time on this phase, don't you? This may actually come in handy here. Yep, there we go. We handle our arrow friends here. Splitters are gone. Alright, this is probably the last phase, I'd say. And we still have our smart bomb. There we go. Sometimes it takes a few tries, but you get there. And now, you'll see the reason for the geomes we've collected. Alright. So we have just enough to upgrade our attack drone. I don't think we did. Well, that accident will still come in handy, because you'll see exactly what our attack drone does. And before our next map, We'll upgrade him. See how much more aggressively it attacks. That happens far more often than I'd like to admit. The music tends to get a little more aggressive as there are more enemies around. Once again, that's the benefit of dynamic music. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Can you feel kind of crunched in and claustrophobic in a 3D environment like this? I don't see why not. Now, these little snakes can only be destroyed in their head, the blue section. But of course, the rest of his body can defeat you just as easily. So it pays to be a little vigilant. Not that I am. The music's picking up. More enemies are spawning. The diamonds aren't too much of a threat, so long as you can kind of corral them in one area and handle them. Oh, there's 2 million. Ah! We still made it though. That one didn't count. So we had that level beaten anyway, right? That's right, we did. We now have a super as well. Let's try them both out, shall we? Upgrading. Select. Can we afford to upgrade the miner? No. That's okay though. We don't necessarily need them yet. The gimmick behind this map is every time you clear the enemies, you get a little more time and enemies respawn. So it's a bit of a time attack mode here, but at the same time. You have to efficiently clear each enemy and make sure they don't pass you. But of course, if you die, you do not get a checkpoint. You have to pick up from there, so don't do that, of course. It's a long short of this, I'd say. Oh, there's one more, is there? Splitters! Oh no! So already we can see our attack buddy's a little more aggressive, isn't it? I'd say the biggest threat of our little UFO friends here is its speed. Get back here, you. Get back. Yay. I don't know if they get more aggressive the more waves you clear, but it's not too big of a deal so far anyway. Because right now, time is your biggest enemy. Especially these little diamonds, you can kind of goad them into your general area. So far so good, right? I'm not going to go too far out of my way for geomes here. Because of course the trick is to clear as many waves without dying as you can. Primarily the point of that was of course to get to the next section. Where are you? There you are. That wasn't good. Kind of counting on our minds a little bit here to deal with the enemies behind us. They're not too effective, but every little bit helps, right? Phew! We're getting awfully close to silver. There it is, silver. I'm okay with this. Success. Now, Titan is my personal favorite game mode here. And in this mode, sure wish I could level that up, but what can you do, right? So we mentioned references for Space Invaders. How about asteroids? Basically, this is how it works. After you shoot one of these enough times, they'll split up. Move it a little quicker. And then they'll split again. And release the actual enemies that particular section's based on. Splitters here. They're far enough behind, or far enough back that they aren't a threat. Fire is really coming into its own, isn't it? Well, attack is coming into its own. See, the splitters aren't too much of a threat yet. This game mode is pretty relaxing. I enjoy it very much. Oh, we already have bronze. Cool. Where is it? There it is. Now's a good time to have it. That enhanced our multiplier and score pretty dramatically. That was a good use of super state. Oh, so you only have one chance. Rough. Still not bad. That particular game mode is good for grinding out geomes, but we're not doing that, are we? Not until we have to. This one's interesting. The barrier keeps fluctuating here, shifting in size. Well, not size, but direction. The battlefield keeps fluctuating. And yes, actually it does fluctuate because the red will kill you. I believe, I don't think lives are a problem. But what is a problem is every time you die, the stage resets. And that's time you're not blasting things. Split fire is really good for the green ones. Ah! It's a good thing you have a second or so before the enemies can actually damage you, especially when things get crazy like this. It's like the game knows the stage is about over, so it just throws everything at you. Almost made silver there. Now we will be coming back to these later, when we have more powerful drones. But we still do not, so... Let's see. This is my personal favorite. And once we beat this boss, we will have it. The only thing that's a bummer is this boss is in a 3D arena. You'll see why that's annoying later. Not too much later. I'm sorry, starting to move around. Guess you don't have that many phases. That would be a good time to get the super state, I'd say. There we go. That was quickly getting out of hand. And deal with the pinkies there. Have more avoidance enemies. A little tornado there, that was pretty dangerous. Where'd you go? Were you the one that spawned that tornado? I think you were. The only problem with 3D mode is that there's a pretty glaring blind spot you have to watch out for. While watching out for everything else. Wave complete. One more. I assume. Phew! Is that silver maybe? Yes, it was.